Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun, deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. Today, my friends, we are talking about soon. We've got one day left, less than 24 hours until Donald Trump is in court in front of a judge being arraigned on a new indictment. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today, in particular, what to expect. Donald Trump left Florida, arrived in New York City today. We've got some clips of that. The mayor out of New York is warning people, telling them, behave, or else maybe they'll get indicted. And then we'll take a look at what NPR has in terms of the process for tomorrow. According to them, the arraignment will be taking place at 2:15, and we will be planning on covering that live tomorrow. So we'll go through that. Then we're going to ask ourselves about some of the decisions that the judge is going to have to answer. This is Judge Juan Mercon. He's got big decisions tomorrow, and I want to run through a couple of them. Mugshot, handcuffs, perp walks, bail, gag orders, sealing or unsealing of the indictment, the next court date, speedy trial rights, all sorts of stuff. So we'll explore that a little bit today. Then we'll turn our attention and understand more about who the defense team is that is being assembled to represent Donald Trump, because they'll be in court tomorrow, prepared to defend him. We have a nice clip from Joe Tacopina. Actually, he had about a 6-minute clip on with Dana somebody or other on CNN. And I want to go through it because she asked him some good questions. It's a good segment where he gives us some info. So we'll go through that. We'll turn our attention, learn more about these two people, Joe Tacopina and Susan Nicholas. And then we'll learn about this new lawyer. His name is Todd Blanche. He literally just entered the game today. So my understanding is he left his law firm, resigned, and said, it's Trump time, baby. I'm getting on the Trump train. Choo choo, let's go. And we know that his life is soon going to be wrecked by the psychopaths out there. But Todd Blanche is joining the game. Shout out to Todd Blanche for taking a big leap and doing something that is well needed. And then we also got, of course, Alina Abba coming up. I saw somebody in the chat who said predictions on Rob playing Alina Abba today. What's the likelihood of Alina Abba being here? She is a smart legal observer. Very insightful observations. That's why we'll hear from her, Alina Abba, coming up. We'll turn our attention over to Congress, ask what they're going to do about this, if anything. Jim Jordan, as we know, is in charge of the Judiciary Committee, very close friends with the Oversight Committee and some other entities there. So we'll check in with him and see what he had to say about it. I've got a clip from Andy Biggs. We got Pencil Neck Adam Watermelon Head Schiff, who we'll hear from, who's out there talking. This was a fun clip. He's on with Saki's new show over at MSNBC. We'll turn our attention to Bill Barr, who says this doesn't end well. And Bill Barr's no fan of Trump, but he recognizes this is not going to be good. And then we'll turn our attention to Vivek, who had some fun quotes and a very satisfying tweet that just feels good that I wanted to share with you here today. And then there are some updates from the special counsel's office, because they're saying they've got even more evidence now to indict Trump again, and they're going to. And we'll go through that one and then turn our attention to Trump speaking tomorrow night after the arraignment. So all of that will be in the first segment, and you can see gonna be some good stuff, and then, or some bad stuff, more accurately. Then we'll turn our attention over to the Proud Boys trial. Day 49. It is a Monday. They were in session Friday, as we know. Somebody had the Friday flu, one of the jurors. Oh, my tummy hurts. Yeah, it's Friday. Give me a break. Yeah, and judge is like, oh, I guess her tummy hurts. And the prosecutor's like, well, I guess their tummy hurts, so we better call it a day. And the defense attorneys are sitting there. What is going on here, people? But the judge told Carmen, sit down. Anyways, so we'll go through all of that. Proud Boys trial, day 49. We'll get to all of it and more. And my friends, if you want to join our outstanding community and be a part of what we do just beyond this live stream here today, you can do that by coming over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we have an amazing community. We do member-only live streams. We have a lot of fun over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You can also join up on YouTube And hey, shout out to our friend Dolphin Fan in the house, who is MVP on our membership recruiting team. Shout out to Dolphin Fan. Man, thank you so much. So we've got a bunch of new members: Mary, Justin, Donna, Lexi, Jay, Chase, Liu, Platypus, outstanding in the house. We've got Villainy, Jana, all welcome, courtesy of our friend Dolphin Fan. And so if you're a member on YouTube, make sure you grab the Telegram link. It is in the members post section, the community post section. Join the Telegram so that we can see you after and in between the streams. Also, want to remind you about our amazing friends over at fieldofgreens.com, because my friends, we would all like to lose those leftover pandemic pounds, and we're all sick of all the ads for the weight loss pills, the fad diets, and all that stuff. We've been there, we've done that. They don't work, but you know what does? Eating healthy. Your daily servings of fruits and vegetables, that's going to help. You do that, the weight would probably just fall off. But look, I know the vegetables, not a fan, and fruit, it goes bad, and it's just kind of a pain to keep. But let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, this is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. And we know that proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you'll look healthier and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next doctor's visit when he says, "Oh my goodness, what have you done? You've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." So let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert when you go over there. That way you'll save 15% off your first order at fieldofgreens.com. The vegetables want to be eaten. They want to be eaten. So make their dreams come true. Get your green energy at fieldofgreens.com, code Robert. And so that, my friends, is where we are going to jump into the meat and potatoes now. Donald Trump arrest is imminent. He's arriving in New York, and we're taking a look at what his team is assembling to respond to this indictment. We've got a defense team that seems like it is now assembling. We have a new player enters the game. His name is Todd Blanche. We're going to go through that and take a look at what Congress had to say about this. But what is it like in New York? Here is where we'll start. Donald Trump arrives in New York City, and he posted several things on Truth Social advising his followers and the rest of America that this was happening. He said this: "I will be leaving Mar-a-Lago Monday at 12 noon, heading to Trump Tower in New York. On Tuesday morning, I will be going to, believe it or not, the courthouse. America was not supposed to be this way." Posted that early this morning, called this indictment election interference, and said that the corrupt DA, Alvin Bragg, has no case. What he does have is a venue where it is impossible for me to get a fair trial. He says it must be changed. And a Trump-hating judge, who we're going to learn a lot about today, hand-selected by a Soros-backed DA. He must be changed. Also, has the DOJ working in the DA's office unprecedented! Exclamation point. From Trump. Now, he is in New York, but this was the scene as he was leaving. Fox News had this covered, the Trump plane taking off, leaving Florida to arrive in New York.
Number 45 is ready for takeoff. Inside the plane, you mentioned Eric Trump, his son is on with him. We couldn't see that from the people that were getting on. He just tweeted, "Watching the plane from the plane." And so there they go. And in the last 45 seconds of this show, the former president of the United States will come to New York City to face an indictment that will be unsealed tomorrow so the rest of the world can see what charges are against Donald J. Trump. And what will that look like? And what will he face at tomorrow's arraignment?
What will he face is going to be a good question. We'll get into that shortly. But there's a question about how he landed. Of course, he took off from Florida, arrives in New York. This is the scene as the Trump motorcade appears to drop Trump off outside Trump Tower as he rests before his arraignment. Secret Service steps out. Looks like Trump is not out yet. There he is. Officer. Walking in. 45 right there, Trump Tower. He makes his way in, waves to the crowd. Not much activity as Trump appears. So as that is happening, you can see people are rounding up outside of the courthouse, outside of Trump Tower. And the mayor, you know him, Mayor Adams from New York, he's warning the ultra extreme MAGA insurrectionaries to behave. He told protesters the city is always ready. Here's what he said.
Specific, credible threat. New York City is always ready. We know that this is a city where our NYPD and other law enforcement entities must be prepared at any given moment for anything to happen in this city. To start, I want to make it clear.
Except carjackings and street level crimes.
The commissioner has stated over and over again, there has been no specific credible threats to our city at this time.
Of course not.
All New Yorkers should go on with their regular activities. That means going.
Did you check with the FBI? You might want to give them a call.
To work, going to school. We're going to do our job as we always do. While there may be some rabble rousers thinking about coming to our city tomorrow, our message is clear and simple. Control yourselves. As always, we will not allow violence or vandalism of any kind. And if one is caught participating in any act of violence, they will be arrested and held accountable.
That's weird. Why are they going to start enforcing the law? I mean, it's been total madness out there. People like Elise Stefanik and others who are actual representatives from New York have explained that this city has been basically a catastrophe ever since this new law and order team swept into power. It's been focused on one particular type of law and disorder. Really, at this point, Trump is all it's been about. Really, it hasn't been about anybody else. I'm very interested how they're going to manufacture some other insurrection 2.0 like they did last time. So I don't know what they're monitoring social media for. They should go check out Langley. It's not far from New York. You see here, they're telling us Donald Trump arrived in New York on Monday, kicking off a 24-hour visit, landed on a personal plane, landed at LaGuardia, 3:28 p.m., quickly surrounded by the motorcade. Got off Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, first former president to be indicted. Now, we have a little bit more that comes in from NPR. They gave us a chronology of what they expect to happen. They say, what's next after the arraignment? They say for months, a 23-person grand jury heard evidence of this. Trump's denied any wrongdoing. A court appearance set for the history books is scheduled for 2:15 on Tuesday, where they're telling us that the charges will be unsealed. And they should be, right? Everybody expects them to be unsealed. We should see everything. We should be able to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. We'll see. This is the first time that it really seems likely a former president is going to be mugshotted and fingerprinted. It's the first court appearance, is what an arraignment is. We were waiting on a specific time, and it's going to be 2:15 is when they are ultimately going to be arriving in court. Here, 2:15 p.m. on Tuesday, and then the next court date following that may not be for a while. Defense attorneys are going to argue it's not possible for Trump to get a fair trial in Manhattan. We'll see what the judge does about that. We're asking when the trial will be set. Probably not for some time away. But we're now asking ourselves, as the arraignment comes to fruition, as Trump finally appears in court, Who is the judge? We know all about Alvin Bragg, this partisan hack prosecutor who was prosecuting Trump and then not prosecuting Trump and then prosecuting Trump. And then we'll see what he does now. But he is constantly changing positions, has done that multiple times because he had prosecutors resign and then he got uninvited to the cocktail parties. And then somebody else came back down and said, now we need you to prosecute him to distract from this other thing. And so basically these people are just actors who are moving the ball forward in one way, shape, or form. They're political actors. But who is the judge? Let's learn a little bit more about him because he's going to be making some big decisions very soon. And I want to talk through a couple of these briefly. But the judge from the AP, they've done an analysis or a report on this. Who is Juan Mercon, the New York judge handling Trump's indictment? His caseload has featured some of the charges against Trump and his company. Now he's going to be involved in this prosecution. Mercon is a former prosecutor with 16 years on the bench. Former prosecutors, they're everywhere. Is expected to preside on Tuesday over the unprecedented arraignment. Former United States president. Trump will appear to answer charges. We know all about that. Trump said that the judge hates me. And they're interviewing other judges. Now, Mercon did not respond to any message seeking comment. They say that he got Trump's case because of a rotation in which judges are assigned to oversee grand juries, and then they just sort of cycle through different cases. Colombian-born Mercon, 60, immigrated to the United States as a 6-year-old, grew up in New York City. First family member to go to college, worked his way through school, law degree from Hofstra. Good, at least it's not Harvard. He was a Manhattan prosecutor, worked at the state attorney general's office before then Mayor Mike Bloomberg appointed him as a family court judge. Then was assigned to the trial court in the Supreme Court, which in the New York courts are not actually the highest court. We call them Supreme Courts in other courts, which are the highest courts. But in New York, the Supreme Courts are the trial courts, and then the Court of Appeals are actually the higher level courts, if I remember that correctly. His particular duties now include overseeing a mental health court. He's got a lot of experience with headline stories, they say, after skydivers were convicted of misdemeanors after jumping off the World Trade Center tower. He sentenced them to community service, saying they had sullied the memories of those who jumped not for sport, but because they had to. Well, community service, I mean, that's not a bad penalty. In the cases before the public eye, the last 2 years trained a Trump orbiting telescope on his courtroom. First came the tax fraud case against Trump's company. Mercon was heavily involved in that. Okay, so he's been in the Trump orbit for a long time, actually. Was involved in the Weisselberg guilty plea. After hearing his testimony, he said that he wished he could impose a tougher penalty. Yeah, so that's where Trump is probably getting this "he hates me" stuff, because he's already ruled against the Trump organization, not Trump himself, but against the Trump organization. The Trump organization went to trial. A jury convicted the company, and Mercon already imposed a $1.6 million fine. So he's already ruled against Trump. When it came time for closing arguments, Mercon let prosecutors claim that Trump knew about the tax cheating maneuvers. The judge said it was only fair because the defense summation had mentioned Trump repeatedly. The defense sought a mistrial over the issue. Mercon said no, obviously. He wanted to keep politics out of the trial. He got annoyed when the Trump organization lawyers sought to introduce new evidence late in trial. So we'll see if they request a notice or a notice for a change of judge, or if they ask for a recusal, a motion for some sort of a new appointment of a new judge because of the historical bias here. I would expect to see that. Separately, a former Trump White House strategist, Steve Bannon, is also on the docket. Trump has a history of questioning their legitimacy. And so there will be a bunch of issues that come out of this. Let's take a look at what some of them might be. First question, will Judge Mercon, actually, he probably won't be involved in this at all. Will Trump have a mugshot? Answer, probably, yeah. They're asking about, honestly, I think Trump might want a mugshot, and they probably do not want a mugshot. But I don't know how you arrest and book somebody on a felony without going through the mugshot process, just like any other felony. If they're really going to treat this as any other felony, I would imagine he would have a mugshot, and we're going to see it. Now, the next question is about handcuffing. And that one is a little bit different. These are two sort of similar issues, handcuffing and perp walk. When you do, self surrenders and somebody gets handcuffed and they get perp walked, I've never been to a New York jail or seen exactly how they're set up. But what I'm envisioning is in that building is they're walking them physically from one location to another. And they have to go down a hall in order to get, let's say, from a courtroom into the booking office, right, where they're doing some other stuff. And so they have to walk somebody through. Somebody's idea was to let the media come in and just watch that walk. But that doesn't necessarily have to happen. And a handcuff situation with the Secret Service and them sitting there saying, hold on now, the New York, these NYPD officers and the court of New York, they're allowing them to handcuff our person. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I can't imagine Trump gets handcuffed. Now, anytime somebody's arraigned, one of the first things you talk about is bail. What are the release conditions? We've had many conversations here on this channel about all of these with Glenn, with Rittenhouse. We talked about Chauvin. We talked about many trials here. And the biggest question is bail, not to mention all the J6 cases where many of them are denied bail and are still denied bail. Many of them for nonviolent offenses. Zachary Rehl was in the Capitol, happened to be in the same courtroom, in the same Telegram groups as other Proud Boys, and has been in custody this entire time. Didn't do anything violent other than just walk around, according to his defense attorney. Now, what is the government going to request? Are they going to request a bail? Are they going to say Trump should post $100,000 or Trump should post $1 million? Because he's got means. Anytime you're considering a regular criminal defendant, you ask, do they have money to leave? Do they have means to leave? Are they a danger to their community? What's the likelihood that they're a flight risk? What's the likelihood that they're a danger to themselves or to, somebody close to them? Can we limit that? We try to have a presumption of innocence in this country where you are automatically released on your own recognizance because you're innocent. But we have all sorts of ways that we can keep you sort of under the court's control. One, of course, is keeping you in custody with bail. But they might say, okay, no bail. This is Trump's first felony offense. We're not going to be overly aggressive with him. We'll treat him like any other defendant who's never been in trouble before. And maybe they grant him, an ankle monitor for a felony offense? Maybe they make him give up his passport? Do they have any travel restrictions? Let us know when you're not allowed to leave the country until you notify the court, get permission from the court. Okay, these are things that are normal in any other criminal case. If Trump were just a regular defendant, they could say you can't leave the country. You can't leave the state. You can't leave your home. They could put you on home detention. Ankle monitoring. You have to check in with a probation officer or a pretrial services personnel, somebody who's monitoring you as this case is pending. You have to do drug and alcohol screening. All of that is possible. What will the court ask? What will the government ask for? And what will the court order? We don't know. But can you imagine how humiliating each one of these would be? And remember, they're trying to make this a ritualistic humiliation. I mean, that's basically what this is. But don't let them do that. Trump's not humiliated. Trump's going to feed off of this, as will the rest of the country, and there will be repercussions for this. So this ritualistic process that they are trying to drag us through will ultimately be their downfall. They don't know that yet, but there are consequences for crossing this line and bringing about mutually assured destruction. I'm talking all political here, which is allowing the prosecution of your political enemies in this country. Now, another big question is about the gag order, and released a video over this weekend about that. Now, I, of course, don't have experience practicing in front of this court or this judge in particular, but somebody from the Wall Street Journal did. We released a video about that, saying the judge would call this something likely. They would say, yes, we would impose a gag order, so Trump cannot speak about it. And then, my friends, we have all sorts of issues, right? That brings in free speech issues, that brings in campaign issues. I think that would go right up to the Supreme Court, and we would see what they say about that. And there is historical precedent about gag orders, and we'd go through all of that. But I'm not so sure there's historical precedent on gag orders for the number one presidential candidate for a political party in the United States and a former president. Not sure how that would sit. But you could also imagine, right? This is an interesting thing that's happening. We're having all of these tools being brought out through the criminal process. And all the prosecutors in New York are just playing along with it. And all the cops out there in New York, all the NYPD, they're just playing along with this big, stupid charade. Everybody's going through it. We have another question about whether the indictment is going to be unsealed or not. And ordinarily it is, obviously, right? Public record, and we get to see what the charges are. But if there is a gag order or there's some other national security implications or whatever they're coming up with, they make this stuff up. We'll see. We'll, of course, take a look at the charges and how they stack them all on top of one another. And then we'll wait for the next court date. And we have to think about the timeline on this. We've got speedy trial concerns. We've got initial pleadings that are all going to be filed. Even my guess is challenging the judge, challenging the jurisdiction, challenging the grand jury indictment, the underlying proceedings. And so this could take quite a while, especially if there's 34 different counts. Each one of those is going to require, interviews and discovery, and we've got to really unpack it. And so Trump may try to delay this or may try to accelerate it, although I don't see why he would want to accelerate it. There will be parallel indictments. I do believe this is the first of many to come. So there will be Georgia, and then we'll also have the special prosecutor, which may have several indictments. We'll see how he separates those out. But the question is, Donald Trump's defense team is now assembled, and are they up to the task of defending the former president against a partisan political hack witch hunt? We see there are new attorneys on this board. We've already heard from Joe Tacopina. We're going to listen to him a bit more today. Susan Nicholas is also on the team. We have Todd Blanche is a new lawyer who enters the game today, and we'll learn more about him. And then, of course, because we're talking about Trump's lawyers, we've got Alina Abba. She's a brilliant commentator. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But first, Joe Tacopina was on CNN, and there are interesting appearances taking place right now. A lot of Trump lawyers are appearing on sort of lefty news sites like CNN. And I think we have Alina Abba was on with Dans Le Monde. So we'll go through that in a quick minute. But Joe Tacopina is one of Trump's main defense attorneys, and he was on with CNN explaining what he has been hearing and what this process is going to look like.
Me now is the former president's lawyer for this case, Joe Tacopina. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I first want to ask you about what you know at this moment about the arraignment, how it's going to go. Walk us through what is going to happen when the former president shows up in New York.
Well, then, I mean, in theory, it should be like the hundreds of other arraignments I've done in that building over the course of my career, which is you walk in, you see a judge, you plead not guilty, you set a schedule, and you leave. Obviously, this is different. This has never happened before. I've never had Secret Service involved in an arraignment before at 100 Center Street. So the answer to that question, Dan, is I honestly don't know how this is going to go. Hopefully as smoothly as possible. And then we begin the battle to right this wrong, because it's a day that, in my opinion, the rule of law in the United States has died.
The rule of law in the United States has died. We'll come back to that. But his point about the arraignment is exactly right. That's how these work. They're very quick. We've covered many arraignments here on this channel, and they are relatively benign hearings. They come in, you know what you've been charged with? You want me to read them formally for you? No? Okay, here's the list. You waive the readings. Okay, great. You have a lawyer? Great, you do. Release conditions. pretty simple. You're kind of in and out. And a lot of this stuff you figure out before the whole proceeding takes place. So that's how it should be. Now, this is the former president. We've got a whole Secret Service team of people here, all the media and all the hyperventilating from Alvin Bragg and his team. So how is it going to go? We don't know.
We'll get to that in a second, but just on the logistics, do you know what time it starts?
2:15.
You know, nothing's been nailed down yet.
Okay.
I think that's going to happen tomorrow, but I think sometime in the afternoon.
Will there be a
2:15.
perp walk? You said you've done many of these before. Most of them do have perp walks.
Not really, not in a case like this. But you know, look, I anticipate them trying to get every ounce of publicity out of this that they can get. You know, I don't know if that's going to happen again. Secret Service is involved, so hopefully this will be as painless and classy as possible for a situation like this, which I don't even know really what brings us here. But that's a different story.
I'm trying to put myself in his position, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I've been in that courtroom a million times. Like downtown Phoenix here, we have the Maricopa County Superior Court. It's right down the street. I'm thinking, okay, what if I was appearing with the president and he was being indicted? You know, I guess the Secret Service would probably take over all of the security, you know, features with the court security staff. They'd probably take over most of the building and then vet it. And then they would say, okay, this is how we're doing it. Where does he need to be at what time? And they would handle the whole thing. And then as a defense attorney, you're probably just making sure nothing's going awry in that process. And you know where things are, so you know where to go and how the process goes. But it would be a very strange feeling. It'd be a very foreign experience. It'd be like a unique court appearance for something you may have done hundreds of times.
Some of the basics are, as you said, you know, necessary as part of this process. Mugshot. Will he have to take a mugshot?
Probably. It's a felony.
Again, Dana, you're asking me questions
know.
that this is not normal operating procedure. Yeah, it's all up in the air. All the Tuesday stuff is still very much up in the air, other than the fact that we will very loudly and proudly say not guilty.
Well, you're a very seasoned attorney, so presumably your strategy is not up in the air. So let's talk about what you're thinking about when it comes to the legal strategy once Donald Trump is arraigned. Are you going to move to dismiss the case right off the bat in the arraignment? And if so, on what grounds?
Probably hasn't seen it yet.
We're not doing anything at the arraignment because that would be showmanship and nothing more because we haven't even seen the indictment yet. You know, we will take the indictment, we will dissect it. The team will look at every potential issue that we will be able to challenge, and we will challenge. And of course, I very much anticipate a motion to dismiss coming because there's no law that fits this. And you have a situation where, you know, the federal government, the Department of Justice, turned this matter down. The FEC, which governs federal election laws, said there's no violation here. Yet somehow a state prosecutor has taken a misdemeanor and cobbled together to make it a felony by alleging a violation of federal campaign violations, and the FEC said it doesn't exist.
Right. Let me ask you about that because you mentioned it. You've been talking a lot about the FEC and federal investigations and allegations, investigations, I should say, that didn't end up in an indictment on the federal level. But we haven't seen the specifics, and we should say that over and over again. This is still under seal, this indictment. But because it is on a local level, on a state level, presumably this will be focused on those issues where he allegedly broke the law there, whether it becomes an issue of trying to defraud a business or something along those lines, not necessarily the FEC and things that you're discussing.
No, it can't be. This was a federal presidential election. The allegation here, in some Twilight Zone sort of scenario, is that he settled the civil case 6 years earlier, something that happens, by the way, all the time. A civil case was settled with confidentiality agreements between a lawyer that was representing him and a lawyer representing the Stormy Daniels. Trump didn't even sign that settlement agreement, so they signed it. The lawyer financed it, subsequently gave him a host of invoices for legal services over the course of a year. They were recorded, but understand, here's the key distinction, Dana. They were recorded in their entries. They were never filed anywhere. They were never filed with the IRS. They never took a tax deduction, and they were never filed with the FEC because they weren't required to. This was a personal expenditure, not a campaign expenditure. Had it been a campaign expenditure, he would have used campaign funds. And then, of course, we'd be talking about here today the outrage that Donald Trump used campaign funds for personal expenditure,
Right.
they'd be baying for his scalp.
Yeah.
It's a completely upside down world. So he's damned if he did and damned if he didn't. So those are misdemeanors, by the way, the record entries, which don't exist. They're not false entries, but assuming they were, they're misdemeanors way beyond the statute of limitations. So they had to cobble them together to try and get a felony.
I'm going to speak to Michael Cohen's attorney next. He says that there is actual evidence that your client, the former president, participated in falsifying business records.
What is it?
Have you seen any such evidence?
I know there's no such evidence. I mean, look, Michael Cohen's lawyer is spinning Michael Cohen's side. Michael
Yeah.
Cohen is a pathological, convicted liar.
Get him,
Perjury
good.
is like the banks,
There
the
you go.
IRS,
Good,
Congress.
exactly. Right on.
Now he's saying he lied to the
Oh,
FEC
the
when he
convicted
sent that
perjurer?
letter saying
That's
there
what
was
he
no
said?
campaign
Oh, okay.
violation. I heard him on CNN the other day saying that when he pled guilty under oath, when he became a new man, he really wasn't guilty. He was forced to plead guilty. So that's perjury, if that's now true. He's someone who is constitutionally incapable of telling the same story the same way twice. So I'm not really worried about what Michael Cohen is saying on this. The records and the facts will speak for themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, right on. And he absolutely hit that one hard. Michael Cohen is not credible at all. We've got signed documents of his where he said that I waive attorney-client privilege. He was on CNN the other day, said, I don't remember that. I never signed anything about it. I mean, Robert Costello said he said one thing and he told the grand jury another. He's already been convicted for perjury. The guy is a bona fide liar, lies time and time again. And people are holding him out as credible for the grand jurors. And maybe they may not even know any of that. So that's Joe Tacopina. I appreciate his slam dunk when she set him up on that softball about Michael Cohen. Well done. Now, this is a little bit more about them. So this is Joe Tacopina. And the other person I wanted to share with you is this woman. Her name is Susan Nicholas, another one of Trump lawyers who is involved in the case. These are the key figures who are here. Let's just talk about a couple of them. This is the legal duo. We've already heard from Joe Tacopina. Now, Susan Nicholas is less communicative. She's sort of the behind the scenes. We call Joe Tacopina front stage. We call Susan Nicholas backstage. Joe Tacopina, the orator, the rhetorician, the persuader, the showman. Susan Nicholas is the thinker, the person who is assembling the drafts, the briefer, the researcher, the strategist, the tactician. She develops it, hands it off to Joe, offloads some of the bandwidth between the two. Hopefully they make a good team. Now, in separate interviews, they say that they have a productive working relationship. They describe it as harmonious, adding that they're likely going to add a third member to the team. And guess what? They did. We're going to learn about him in a minute. Of course, I've worked with difficult clients over the years, said Nicholas, which I found very offensive. Donald Trump, could you imagine him being difficult as a client? He has been calling Alvin Bragg names, and that's very offensive to a lot of people out there. Tacopina said the case is in some ways unremarkable. In other ways, it's extraordinary. On the one hand, this is the belly of the beast, low-level case. On the other hand, it's the former president. He said, I'm buckling my seatbelt, buddy. Let's put it that way. Neither lawyer would discuss their strategy, but they are both ready to go. So that's who we're dealing with. We also have a new player enters the game. This is Todd Blanche, who is now also on Trump's team. Politico got this one as well. Trump taps white-collar attorney to helm the indictment defense. This happened very recently. Todd Blanche resigned from his position as a partner at an elite New York law firm to join the former president's defense team. And can I just pause for a moment and just say, shout out to this guy for doing that? I mean, resigning and committing to defend Donald Trump. The media is going to try to bury this dude. The left is going to try to eviscerate his life. We know projects like the 6-5 Project and like other just worst of the worst kind of people. People like Chris Krebs. They say that lawyers who defend Trump should lose their licenses. Okay, they're actively working on that. There are groups that are actively working to take guys like this and their license away, to remove his livelihood, because they don't even think Trump should have a defense. They don't think he should be running for president. They don't think he should have any supporters at all. He should have no ability to speak. He should have no ability to spend or use money. He should have no ability to even exist freely in society anymore. He shouldn't have the right to legal counsel because they are cheaters. They want to remove you from the field any way they can. If you're a doctor who denies COVID, removal. You're a lawyer who supports Trump or challenges the violation of our civil rights every day by the overarching totalitarian government that is matriculating right now. All of that is their attempt to balance the game in their favor. And this dude, Todd Blanche, said, "Put me in, coach. I'm ready. No problem." Running into the fire, man. Shout out to Todd Blanche. We're pulling for you, brother. All right. Former President Donald Trump hired a top white-collar criminal defense lawyer and former federal prosecutor, that's I'm not so happy about, but as his lead counsel to handle Manhattan DA's office, their indictment of Trump. Until recently, he was a partner at a law firm, said in an email he was resigning because I've been asked to represent Trump in a recently charged case. I've decided it is best thing for me to do and an opportunity I should not pass up. It's true. You should not pass it up. This is a moment in time. This is a historical fork in the road in America. And we're going to see where people end up after this sort. And who is on the side of due process, equal protection of the law, the presumption of innocence, the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, and who's not, who just ignores this and sits on their hands and doesn't speak out about this. Blanche declined to comment on Monday. Trump is also represented by other lawyers, Joe Tacopina and others. Former assistant U.S. attorney, has previously represented Trump ally Paul Manafort and others, one-time associate of Giuliani. Apparently, the representation of Manafort may have caught Trump's eye. Very vocal about the indictment and other things. And so you can see Trump is assembling his team. We'll see where that goes. Now, somebody who is a lawyer for Trump, but who is not necessarily on his criminal defense team, but who is a brilliant and astute legal observer nonetheless, and a brilliant tactician, her name is Alina Abba. And she was commenting on Trump's debacle.
Former president, and do the legal team, the unsealing of the document, do you support that? Does he support that?
Yes, I mean, I think it will happen no matter what. I would like to see what the basis is
It
for
should be
this.
unsealed.
Let's remember that the real crime here that we have is that DA Bragg did leak that there were 30 to 34 counts. We already know that. That in itself is a felony. You are not to let that go. So at this point, I mean, and I like
Alina,
everybody
we
in this
don't
country
know
to be treated the same no matter who you are.
We don't know if the DA leaked that information.
Where'd it come from?
Well, we don't have that information, so... Well, it's not speculation. We don't have.
Where'd it come from?
So it came from their office.
Yeah, dans les mains. Where else did it come from? It's in their office. We don't know the DA leaked it. Well, where'd it come from? Did it just magically appear? No, it didn't, dans les mains. They leaked it, and it's illegal to do that. So hopefully the Republicans are investigating that, and Alvin Bragg is indicted and arrested and has his residence raided by the FBI. Don't hold your breath. All right, so we're waiting to see what Congress is going to do about this, if anything. And we've got a couple clips to attend to. We've got Andy Biggs here, Schiff, Bill Barr. But the big question, is Jim Jordan going to do anything about the Trump indictment? Are the Republicans going to spring into action? What the heck is going on? Jim Jordan was over on Fox News having a conversation about the next steps.
Jim Jordan, Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for joining me this morning to this.
Well, overall, it's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, Mr. Bragg has conceded that he used federal funds. We know that this grew out of the federal, the special counsel investigation, which is federal statute, and most importantly, involves a federal election. I mean, here we are, as you indicated, we're 4 months away from the first debate in the primaries for the election to the most important office we have, President of the United States. And so it is ridiculous. I think the American people see it for what it is. I mean, think about it, Maria. Secretary Clinton can destroy 30,000 emails. Joe Biden gets to keep quiet his classified document issue. But with President Trump, they spy on his campaign. They raid his home 91 days before an election. And now they indict him on a campaign finance violation when he didn't even use campaign funds for the transaction in question. So this is ridiculous. The country understands it. And that's why we, 3 different committees, are trying to get information and answers to key questions from District Attorney Bragg.
Yeah, but Congressman, I mean, this is really happening. I mean, Trump is preparing to surrender after this indictment on Tuesday. Now, the Manhattan DA has confirmed that he used federal money in his investigation into this so-called hush payment that was made to Stormy Daniels. Give us the significance of that.
Well, they keep saying, oh, you're not supposed to be involved because, you know, this is a local prosecution decision. And we're saying, well, look, you use federal funds. You conceded that in your response to the letter that myself, Mr. Steil, Mr. Comer sent to you a few days ago. You conceded that. That we think this grew out of the special counsel investigation, as I said earlier, which is obviously a federal statute. And maybe most importantly, this involves the most important election we have, the election for president of the United States. Remember, the DOD wouldn't bring the case. That Cy Vance, the previous district attorney, would not bring the case. Even Alvin Bragg himself, even though he campaigned on going after Mr. Trump, President Trump, when he gets elected, he decides not to bring the case. Then 2 of his assistants resign, pitch a fit, get the left all fired up. And maybe most importantly, President Trump announces he's going to run for president. And then suddenly he changes his mind and comes forward with this indictment this past week. So that is, I think, why we have the questions we do and why we've asked Mr. Bragg to sit down with us and answer our questions. And we expect that he will do so. But we'll find out. And what I think is most important, everything is on the table because the American people deserve answers to why a district attorney is doing what I think Kim Strassel in her piece pointed out so clearly, crossing this Rubicon, doing something that has never happened in the history of our great country.
They launched nukes. They started the mutually assured destruction game. They decided it was worth it. They can't stand Trump. They wake up in cold sweats every night thinking about it. They run for office on the basis of it. They campaign for it. They fundraise off of it. They lose friends when they go to cocktail parties and they get criticized for not focusing on that. And this is it. This is where we are. Now, I think it is going to be a pretty big problem, and Congress seems fired up about it. Here's somebody else who is speaking out. Andy Biggs, shout out to Arizona.
I think it is an abuse of power. It undermines the rule of law. And I mean, we could really elaborate on this, but what they're doing is they are attacking him for political purposes. And I really believe that puts the entire country in jeopardy. And we've seen weaponization before, but I'm not sure we've seen this level of weaponization where you are trying specifically. This guy campaigned on trying to take out President Trump. And I'm just disgusted by it and angered by it. And I would suggest that we have to do something like reduce funding to the New York. If he's getting any grants or funding, that DA's office should get no more grants or funding.
No more grants, no more funding. Congress can definitely start there. We'll see if they do that or not. Now, there was somebody who was very upset about Donald Trump, who seems kind of happy about this. A lot of the people on the left almost doing cartwheels. Look who it is. Jen Psaki. She's back again. She's on MSNBC. And Psaki was talking with Schiff.
Long time as a fellow member of Congress from California. What do you think is motivating him in this moment?
Well, I think what's motivating him is he senses the base of the Republican Party is still with Donald Trump, and therefore he's still going to be with Donald Trump. He's doing what he and Jim Jordan and others did during the impeachment proceedings, and that is act as a kind of surrogate criminal defense team for Donald Trump, run interference for him. In this case, try to interfere with the Manhattan District Attorney prosecution. That, of course, is not the role of Congress. What he should be doing as Speaker is uplifting the justice system, saying, let the jury decide, let the prosecution prove its...
Uplift the grand jury of New York. Wow, they're so brilliant. Wow, Alvin Bragg and Tishy Latish James, these two geniuses, are doing a great job bringing justice to the state, and they're presenting a very fair, very impartial, totally apolitical prosecution. Lift them up. This guy was responsible for being on the J6 committee, which was, in my opinion, one of the worst developments in modern recent history. It's like the analog of the I can't think. It escapes me right now. I'm trying to think of another name. I was just reading about it this weekend. I'll come back to that. Had a brain flub right there. But this is the rest of Schiff. I'll think about it as he's speaking.
Case beyond a reasonable doubt, if it can refrain from violence. This is what any responsible speaker would say. But you know, it's, sadly, under Donald Trump, the Republican Party in Congress has become this kind of cult around his personality and shredding any devotion it once had to the rule of law.
McCarthyism. That's what I was thinking of. McCarthyism. Accusation, subversion, treason. All of those things are basically what these guys have been doing for the last several years, and they're not letting up on it anytime soon. So we continue on. Now, Bill Barr, you know Bill Barr is the former Attorney General of the United States. Bill Barr doesn't have any particular love for Donald Trump. Remember this. He was involved in the Trump administration, but when Trump was asking even for his support on certain causes, he's, no, I'm not with you on that one. I don't think that's true at all. But even Bill Barr recognizes the catastrophe that this Trump indictment is going to be bringing upon America.
What are you thinking here, Bill Barr? Well, I agree with most of what you said, Larry. Now, obviously, we don't have the indictment, so there's a little bit of speculation involved. But based on the news reports, if they're accurate, this is an abomination. It's the epitome of the abuse of prosecutorial power.
Wow.
To bring a case that would not be brought against anyone else. They are going after the man, not a crime.
Yes.
And the legal theory, frankly, is pathetically weak. The case is held together by, you know, chicken wire and paper clips and rubber bands. It's a lousy case. It's a shame. It's a shameful episode in our history where this local prosecutor is trying to affect the political process by bringing this case. And I think it's going, you know, we're going to rue the day we cross this Rubicon.
Wow.
There'll be more and more of this. And, you know, it just doesn't end well. It doesn't end well.
Does not end well. As I said, the Republicans are going to have to do the same thing, and they're going to start prosecuting the left. They should. Otherwise, they're going to get prosecuted. We now play this game of who's going to put the other side in jail first. Doesn't work out well. Normally, you have a unified set of rules when you play a game. You both agree you're not going to kick each other in the nads because that's not an appropriate thing to do. But if somebody starts doing it, in this case, it's not that. In this case, it's shanking you in the back, essentially. We'll see what they do on this one, but they're trying to eliminate this person with a stab in the back, and Donald Trump is making him do it in his face. That's why he's showing up there in person. But Bill Barr recognizes it's not going to end well. Nobody wins in a knife fight. Everybody dies. It's not good. So that will continue on. Now, Vivek, who is running for the presidency, is out defending Trump very aggressively. He's the only candidate doing it because I think he recognizes this is a much bigger issue than just an isolated Trump incident. And it's also good politics. This is also a way to ingratiate yourself with a lot of people for whom this is a major issue. It also has me thinking about Trump Vivek 2024, but we'll get back to that in a minute. We have a question here for Vivek. He was on with NBC, on with Meet the Press, and he says, rather than prosecuting your political opponents in America like they do in other countries that we castigate and criticize and condemn, why don't we let the people vote?
I want to win because every voter in this country gets a chance to decide for themselves who actually runs this country. You talk about preserving our democracy. You hear this a lot across the political spectrum, including on the left. Well, you know what? One way is to gut the faith in our democracy is to somehow legally eliminate one of the major candidates from running. It'd be a lot easier for me if he was eliminated. I don't want that. I want it to put it to the voters and win through the front door.
Win through the front door, put it to the voters, and let us decide. if we think Trump is this real evil criminal, this monster, are you saying that the American people can't decide that for themselves? Or are you saying that the American people are too stupid and we have to be protected by reality, from reality by you? Doesn't make that much sense to me. But that's what they want. They want you to think about, oh gosh, Doge. They want you to think about whatever they want you to think about. Vivek posted this one. Now, this was very enjoyable. And I know that Vivek is probably a long shot for the nomination during the primaries. But what about Vivek as number 2? Think about this one for a second. Here's what he posted. And it gave me the warm and fuzzy feelings. I don't know about you. Let me read this for you. Here's what Vivek is promising. I will end the weaponization of police power in America. Time to stop complaining and actually fix the problem without apology. 1, shut down and replace the FBI. Shut down and replace the IRS. Pardon all federal defendants prosecuted based on political motives. This includes Douglas Mackey and nonviolent J6 defendants denied due process. Hold Congress accountable for taxpayer money used as hush money for harassment claims. And finally, the cherry on top, publish the Jeffrey Epstein client list. The police state can't be weaponized to protect a select few. Woo! Woo! I like that. That sounds good to me. I'm pretty happy with that list. Yeah, again, okay, maybe Trump, maybe we put him in charge of something. Put him in charge of Department of Homeland Security, or put him in charge of some entity. Put him on the team, man. I like what I'm hearing here. And he's the only one speaking out about this. And this is all in response, in my opinion, to what he's seeing happen with Donald Trump. And so shout out to the politicians who are speaking up about it, and pay attention to those who are not. Pay attention to those who are staying silent on this and just saying, well, we're going to see how it plays out and we're going to see how all of this unfolds. No, not how it works. Shout out to Vivek on that one. Now, we've got some other stories. As Trump is prosecuted in New York, there are other things percolating around the country. Washington Post had an exclusive on this one. They say the Justice Department is said to have more evidence of possible Trump obstruction. They're going through emails and things. Now, they say that the DOJ and FBI investigators have amassed fresh evidence showing obstruction, possible obstruction by Trump when they were trying to dig into his secret documents. The additional evidence comes as investigators have used emails and text messages from former Trump aide to help understand key moments. The new details highlight the degree to which special counsel Jack Smith and his investigation into the mishandling of these documents has happened. And previously here, we've talked about Jack Smith. He's gotten waivers. He can now question Trump's lawyers. He can now question Trump's executives, people like Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff, people like Evan Corcoran, Trump's lawyer. They're all being interviewed by Jack Smith. All of those privileges have been breached. The Trump investigation, much further along than the Biden probe, which nobody is even talking about. The Trump investigation team has spent much of its time focusing on the events. Mar-a-Lago is one of 4 separate criminal probes. New York, we've got Georgia, and we've got 2 others stemming from the special counsel's investigations. They say they've gathered new significant evidence that after the subpoena was delivered, Trump looked through the contents of some of the boxes in the home, apparently out of a desire to keep certain things in his possession. Now they suspect, based on witness statements and security camera footage and other evidence, that the boxes were moved around. They say Trump personally examined some of the boxes. While Trump's team returned some of the documents, they found more classified documents that had not been turned over. So they're saying Trump was personally involved in it. He said, they want the boxes? What boxes do they want? Let me see what's in there. He went and looked at them, and then he said, okay, give them that stuff, but I want to keep this stuff, therefore illegal. This will bring intent because they'll show that he actually ordered those boxes over here. He rummaged through them, and then he sent them back. That was him obstructing. That was him denying a subpoena. And we have the Washington Post reporting more, and this continues on. But let's turn our attention now over to what happens after this, because Trump is going to be speaking tomorrow. The arraignment will be taking place, and we are planning on covering that live. So make sure that you are subscribed wherever it is you're watching this. Make sure you've got those notification bells ticked, because we're probably going to be, I don't know what we're doing tomorrow, but we'll see what's going on and jump into it as it's unfolding. So make sure you're joining us. But this is what's happening tomorrow night. So the arraignment will be taking place 2:15 Eastern time, presuming Trump gets bond and he's released. Then he'll be flying back to Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. And that evening, 8:15, so a few hours later, he will be speaking, delivering remarks in Palm Beach. And so we'll keep our eye on that one as well. But the Trump indictment is looming. We'll continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thank you for liking this video wherever it is you're watching it. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one, my friends. All right, and we're going to change gears and jump on over to the Proud Boys. We've got that trial to still get to. Zulu says, how do we know the difference between a big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and a witch hunt? Well, I define those terms. Obviously, I define them. I know it's something to do with tribalism, but I was wondering whether that can be honed somewhat. Well, I'm open to suggestions, Zulu. Yeah, whatever you want to do. I'm open to suggestions on that. But thank you for sending that one in. All right, we'll check back in on the super chats. I saw that one come through. Thank you, Zulu. All right, and we are not done for the day yet. Tara Rayner, thank you, Tara. We have to turn our attention over to the Proud Boys. Proud Boys trial, day 49. We continue on in the case. The defense is presenting. We have Carmen Hernandez, who's got her case in chief in front of the jury. Remember, she is the defense attorney for Zachary Real. The case is under review, and it's being brought to us courtesy of our friend Roger Parloff, who is on Twitter, telling us he's going to be live tweeting this, and he doesn't want to jinx anything here, but it's looking like maybe we might be done with evidence this week. What? That's going to be very fast if that's true. And so we had a little bit of delays this morning. We know that there is this battle over Ray Epps and whether Ray Epps is going to be called in to testify. And I'll very likely unpack this in another video because there's several motions that are flying around on this, as well as a subpoena. So we'll fast forward through that. But this morning in court, there was a delay. Everybody was there except, guess who? Carmen Hernandez, Zachary Real's defense attorney. Everybody's going, what the heck is Carmen? Where the heck did she go? Well, it turns out we're still waiting. 51 minutes go by, and she's still not here. Now, Roger says, there was apparently some sort of a problem with the Red Line Metro, being told that Hernandez often takes the Red Line, and so that might be what's delaying her. Says that while we're waiting, they're having some conversations about other things. Court proceeds. Carmen Hernandez arrives. A few minutes later, Judge Kelly's on the bench. Carmen says, oh, gosh, I'm so sorry, Your Honor. I was on the Red Line. You might have heard about it. He says, yeah, I did hear about it. Carmen says, yeah, someone either fell on the tracks or they threw themselves on the tracks. I couldn't find an Uber, so I just walked over here. Sorry, I'm late. The judge said, apology accepted. The judge says, all right, well, now that we're all here, hopefully that dude's okay, whatever happened on the Red Line. Says, all right, well, apologies accepted. Now, I want to discuss some jury instructions this afternoon. They moved past that. Any issues with your first witnesses, Carmen? She says, no problems here. Prosecutor McCullough weighs in. He says, Your Honor, the cousin of this witness, who Hernandez is going to call, entered the Capitol with Zach Real, and he's been instructed not to discuss the charges that his cousin was charged with. They bring that up. Anything else? Norm Pattis raises his hand. He says, okay, Your Honor, Yeah, just an update. After court last week, he's representing defendant Biggs. Defense attorney says, after last week, we met with the government midday. Remember, Friday was an early day. There was a sick juror again. Tummy aches. The Friday flu was acting up. There may be some additional material, the defense says, that might be useful to the defense that the government told us about on Friday. Says the government has arranged for at least 2, maybe 3 Metro PD officers to be available to be interviewed by us. Interesting. So defense might have 3 more cops that they want to come in and testify. Says there's potential use value in this. We may want some longer breaks than usual, maybe like 25 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Judge says, no problem. We can handle that. Anything else? No, nothing else. Let's get started. All right, the jury gets brought in. Carmen Hernandez is now at the podium. She calls the defense's 5th witness. For real. Your Honor, the defense calls Demetrius Robbins. Demetrius Robbins comes in. Sir, please raise your right hand. You promise to tell the truth? I do. God? Yes, I do. Hey, Demetrius, where are you from? He says, I'm from Philly. And are you working? He says, yes, I am employed. What do you do for a living? I'm a manager for something. Roger missed it. He says, did you know anybody else who was there on January 6th? He says, yeah, actually, I'm the cousin of Isaiah Giddings. Another person. Now, this is a very tall black man with a goatee beard. And he says, are you a member of the Proud Boys? He says, yeah, I was. What chapter? The Philly chapter. And how long have you been a Proud Boy? He said, I became a Proud Boy on July 4th, 2020. And just so we're clear on this is a black man, a tall black man who is in what I thought we were told was a very racist white supremacist organization. Just so we're clear about that. Now, drove from Atlantic City, he said, to DC. I came with my sister and 4 of my cousins. What did you do that for? I wanted to see the fireworks. Did you get to enjoy the fireworks, Demetrius, when you were here? He says, no, actually. We did not get to enjoy the fireworks. How come? He said we were wearing Trump shirts. A group of counter-protesters shouted Black Lives Matter at us, and they were hollering in the children's faces. And so we were there to watch fireworks, and some of the kids started crying, and they were calling me a very bad word that I'm not going to be repeating here. And they were calling me a word as well. He says, I believe it was because I was wearing a Trump shirt. 4 people came up and they sheltered the children and they escorted us with police out of the park. They took us to the hotel by Harry's Barr. We met Zach Reel there as well. And Zach, my client, the defendant here, he was one of the people who helped my family. They did. How'd they help your family in December? He said, actually, they paid for our hotel stay. We could not leave the area because the counter protesters and the police had blocked the road. Police told us we couldn't leave at that moment at all. And so Zach Reel, a Proud Boy, paid for the hotel for me and my family. He says, that's pretty nice. Have you ever been through something like this before? He says, no, I've never experienced Antifa before. He said, well, what happened after that? He said, well, that evening after this ordeal, we were asked if we wanted to join the group called the Proud Boys. Enrique Tarrio was there, and Tarrio was the one who read him in to the Proud Boys. He said, how'd they read you into the Proud Boys? He said, well, it's pretty easy. We just had to repeat some words. He said, I'm trying to remember what I had to say. Probably a rite of passage ceremony. He had to repeat some sort of a ceremonial process. He said something about being Western chauvinist who refused to apologize for creating the modern world. That's interesting. And so that's all you did? You read the oath and you just became a Proud Boy? Yeah, I became a Proud Boy that evening. At some point, he says, I went back to Philly. And when I got back there was a Proud Boys chapter there. And I had to go through a process to become a Proud Boy. What was that? He said, well, they ask you some questions? He says, sort of. Carmen Hernandez is direct examining Demetrius and says, okay, I want to show you a video. Looks like you're in this video here. Is that right? Looks like a meeting space of some kind. She's having a little bit of difficulty getting the audio to play. He says, Carmen says, do you see this? He says, yeah, that's me right there. It looks like a mild hazing ritual with mock punches to the stomach. And then it's name 5 cereals, and then they stop mock punching. He said, it was in an American Legion hall. What's going on here? He says, well, you have to name 5 cereals. They're sort of fake punching you in the stomach, and you have to say Fruit Loops, granola. You have to say Captain Crunch or whatever you have to say, and lots of drinking. And he gets hit in the stomach. Friday night goes by. Now, Real is leading the event. Witness points out to Robin's cousin that Isaiah Giddings is in the room too. He said, were there any hard feelings after all this punching? He says, no. Just a bunch of men who like to drink and have fun? He says, yeah. Now, you went to other rallies with Real, didn't you, Demetrius? Yeah. And you went to one in Las Vegas, right? Yeah. And he says, well, I went to Vegas with them. I wouldn't say it was a rally, but yeah. He says, I want to show you a photo. Carmen says, I want to show you a photo of what's going on in Las Vegas. Puts a photo up on the screen. He said, what's going on here? It's Robbins, Real, and Giddings. He says, oh, it's a guy's trip out to Vegas, but we brought our family as well. You guys, what are you doing out there? He says, drinking. We were out there drinking. Any violence on that day? No. Did Real, my client, Carmen asks, engage in violence that day? No. I want to show you another photo. We see Amanda's in this photo, right? Zach's wife. Yeah. What's going on here? Oh, there's Christmas decorations in the back. It looks like we were at their home for Christmas. Well, that's nice. They invited you over to Christmas? What a nice family. Carmen says, now, Demetrius, are you familiar with the Ministry of Self-Defense? That's the Proud Boys Telegram chat that they were in that was the subject of a lot of the government's questioning. He says, no, I don't remember that. You don't remember becoming a member of the chat and filling out an application to join the chat? He says, no, not that I recall. Were you in D.C. on January 6th? No. Yeah, I heard you had a car accident on January 5th. Is that true? Yeah, that's the reason I didn't come. Roger says that didn't seem to be the answer that Carmen expected on that. She says, was there any other reasons you didn't come? He says, well, yeah, another reason I didn't come was apparently there were some Proud Boys that were stabbed back on December 12th, 2020. And Carmen tries again with the chat. Says, are you sure you don't remember asking to become a member of the chat? He says, no, I don't remember, but it's been a while. Well, let me refresh your recollection on this. So you filled out do you remember filling out a form? Maybe I did. Would it refresh your recollection? Here's a form. Does this look familiar to you? Your Telegram handle? Yeah, it's Meech. Yeah, it looks like Meech. And she's going through the form. And he says, oh, you remember this form? Yeah, I remember this form. And you have to fill this out, right? And she's going through it and says, did you check this box? I will always act in self-defense and I will never initiate a confrontation. Did you sign that? Yeah. Now they'll show them a different photo. Here's the photo they're sharing and says, who are these people? Identifies. So she puts this photo up and says, who are all these people? And he identifies a couple of them. None of them are Zachary Real. So Carmen Hernandez says, boom, not my client. No further questions, Your Honor. She's done. Prosecutor comes back out. Prosecutor McCullough's up. He says, all right, Demetrius. So you ended your relationship with the Proud Boys before January 6th. Is that right? Yeah. And that's because you thought that your beliefs were incompatible with being a Proud Boy. Is that true? Yeah. And you gave away all your Proud Boy gear? Yeah. And you learned that the Philly Proud Boys could be violent? He says that's not correct. You advised Zach Real of a potential doxer before you left. Is that true? So no, I don't remember that. But you told Real about a liberal activist at Temple that you knew, right? And if Real told him that he was a Proud Boy, the activist would dox him. You remember that? Yeah. And that was in December 2020. Objection, sidebar. Judge says, okay, we're going to release the jury for 10 minutes. Attorneys, you stick around. They have a brief conversation. Now the attorneys go for 10 minutes. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. Now, don't know exactly what they're talking about, but Judge Kelly comes back and he makes a ruling. He says, all right, this is what I've been thinking about. Now, it's incumbent on the government to share this in a meaningful way with defense counsel for them to be prepared to respond. Having thought about it, I'm dubious this is proper, Mr. McCullough, the prosecutor. I'm dubious this is proper. I don't know what they're talking about here, but I'm dubious too. He says, judge says, mostly because I'm not sure what the relevance of most of this testimony was in the first place, frankly. I guess the point is that the nature of Mr. Real's chapter is not what the government would have us believe. But once we get into a particular statement by Real urging the celebrating of violence, we're treading into 403 territory, he says, especially something untethered to political rallies. Prosecutor says, yeah, but judge. But Hernandez, she wants to set up the idea that the guys in the Philly chapter were like Elks Lodge, you know, like they were just enjoying manly company, like they were just drinking and fake punching each other in the stomach. She wants to say that Real did not bring a fighting force to DC, just a bunch of drinking bros. And she says, and the prosecutor says, I've got evidence that refutes that. She's trying to paint this picture that's just a bunch of frat bros out drinking and punching each other. I want to show the difference there. I want to show that they want to violently beat up this doxer, the person who is going to dox them. And the judge says, yeah, but that's not the same thing. Like doxing is not the same thing as we need to show up on J6 and do violence. It's not the same thing. Prosecutor says, yeah, it is. He's saying this man is a threat to us, the Proud Boys, and he's saying that we should respond with violence. This man was eventually added to the chat, and others were in the chat, and they were talking about the past violence, and the prosecutor just wants to talk about it. Anything that resembles violence, the prosecutor wants to get it in because these prosecutors are trying to just beat that into the jurors' heads. Judge says, all right, I've heard enough of it, okay? I'm ruling it out. If you want to take one of these things and show it to the witness and ask if that's consistent with self-defense, you can do that. Hernandez is correcting the record about the chat. Said, I've not found a single time where this witness participated in the chat. I asked about Las Vegas. They said it was not a rally, so I did not open the door to other rallies. Prosecutor says he left the Proud Boys before J6, not before the chat started. He was invited to the chat. The two individuals were not added by Bertino. They were added by Donahoe. They're also members of the chapter. And Hernandez says, Your Honor, I am still downloading what the government just sent me. One document is more than 3,000 pages. I'm not prepared because I'm still downloading this. 3,000 pages. How can you possibly be prepared to answer anything when you've got 3,000 pages that you haven't reviewed on your desk? Prosecutor says, Judge, sorry, we collect all the materials we might use. One of the materials is 3,500 pages, of which we'd use these particular pages, 130 to 133. And they said, the reason we sent over all 3,500, because I'm hesitant to send over a few pages because they asked for the surrounding context. You know, Your Honor, if I give them too little, they ask for too much. So I'll just give them 3,500 pages. Okay. Now, the concept that Hernandez didn't review her client's exchanges with his individuals, prosecutor says, I don't believe that for a second. Judge says, Your Honor, says, look, everybody, I've ruled the doxing stuff out, okay, but the chat stuff can come in. So they can talk about the chat, but not about the doxing chat. Carmen says, Judge, how can we possibly have this chat stuff? He does not have a single post on this. He barely even understood he was in MOSD. And I don't know if she said this in open court or what this is, but Dick Sweats, pronounced differently, might be Sweats, first name Dick. She says Dick is not even in Philadelphia. He's in Lehigh. This Kushnikov guy is not even in Philly. So Dick Sweats is not even in the city that they're talking about. And his brother, Tom freezing my balls off, is in a whole different state. So the judge finally weighs back in and says, look, I think we should have an extended break for lunch. And I should come back at 1:30 p.m. and resume with the cross of the witness. Hernandez can download the documents during this period, and defense counsel can interview the officers, whoever they're making available. So apparently we have another prosecutor, Jocelyn, who I think's new. She's the chief of the section handling conspiracy cases. She's present in the room. We have a new prosecutor entering the game. We haven't heard from old Jocelyn yet. Ballantyne's usually here when we're discussing informants, so the Metro PD officers may relate to Lieutenant Shane Lamond or other intelligence units. Very interesting. Now we're breaking until 1:30. And we're fast forwarding. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. Hope you had a great lunch, everybody. Now, the defense attorneys were working hard because the government just keeps dropping wheelbarrows full of documents, 3,500 pages on them. Defense attorney says, okay, Your Honor, we interviewed the 2 police officers, and we're going to meet with one more tomorrow. We might seek relief, but we'll talk it out amongst the team, and we'll get back to you tomorrow on this. Judge says, all right, well, we've got an issue here. I need to speak to the parties about something under seal. Roger Parloff says this is like a really under seal. Even though there was white noise before, now they've entirely unplugged the screens and the audio in the media room too. The white noise is actually louder down here in the media room than the courtroom, but the lawyers don't seem to trust that it's sufficient. Wow. And the white noise is literally white noise. It fills the courtroom. They play it over the speakers. It sounds, you can't hear anything. They're turning the screens off. Now, we turn our attention to Roger Parloff, and he's having a family emergency, and he has to leave. So we're going to pause there and say a prayer for Roger Parloff's family. Hopefully his family is okay, and we'll give them our warmth and our love and thoughts. Hopefully that is working well. But Brandy Buckman is somebody else who is handling this, and let's see if she has anything further for us. And we also have another person who, Inner City Press. Let's see if he was there today. He's down covering Trump, it looks like. All right, so that may be the end of our coverage. I didn't realize that that was going to end. Let's see what Brandy Buckman has. Okay, she's got some good stuff here for us. Now, we pick back up. She tells us, right now, the courtroom remains sealed. We left off with Roger, and we pick up with Brandy. Shout out to Brandy Buckman. Make sure you're following Brandy Buckman. She says the courtroom is still sealed. That means the jury is still waiting. Now, this is a group and a judge. She says they can spin off into different directions. It's 3:02 Eastern now, and I have to leave at 4 p.m. chance that the jury was released early today. They're still sealed. And remember, they were going to take the afternoon off to talk jury instructions at some point during this week. And we're back here for a little bit. Now, unsealed. Roots is speaking for Dominic Pezzola, talking. Judge Kelly is telling Roger Roots for Dominic Pezzola, says, I take your point, but this is an instruction given to every jury in this courthouse. They're talking about jury instructions. Pattis wants there to be an option for jury nullification. He says, I think this is implicitly recognized in our rights of law to nullify proceedings. Pattis says, I join with Roots, and Hernandez wants in as well. Everybody wants the jury nullification in there, obviously. Jaraguay is raising his mic. He also wants jury nullification. We all want jury nullification. Pattis says that there was a Second Circuit decision. Your Honor, I found this case. They ruled 2-1. Says, I note one dissent. He fires it off to the judge. Judge says, it's a long shot. I'm probably not going to include it, but I'll look at it. Prosecutor says, Judge, look, here in the D.C. Circuit, we have a case from 2020. It notes we have already decided that the Sixth Amendment provides no right to jury nullification arguments. That's binding to you. The circuit has decided there's no right to jury nullification. Prosecutors always want the jury to do whatever they tell them to. They don't want juries to think about nullifying the case, which you have the right to do that, right? You can always say, I think this is unjust, and I'm going to vote to acquit. But they don't want you to talk about that and inform them of that. Roots says it's not jury nullification. Says the jury must acquit if the government doesn't present its case. We're not asking for that. Says, I don't see the daylight between that and a nullification. Kennerson cites another case called Wilkerson. Pattis, they're still talking jury instructions. Pattis says, Your Honor, firmly convinced isn't suitable legal language. Any attention directed away from the reasonable doubt standard dilutes the standard, and I want that phrase deleted. Judge says, well, I'm looking through the draft instructions. On the 7th page, there's a reference to accomplice testimony. He says, I'm going to put that in brackets because Judge Amit in another courtroom called it participant testimony in the Oath Keeper cases. Says the accomplice instruction is teed up as if the government is involved, but this is more neutral. So this stuff is very, very technical and boring. It's not going to translate well in a live thread. Prosecutor says, we think the court's treatment of Judge Maida of this, as Judge Maida did as well, captures the book. Now, the jury is going to have some plea agreement language in the jury instructions. All the defense is fighting that language. Judge says, to the extent that that applies to your witnesses, the government did have an opportunity to cross them and talk about the bias. Maybe that means you don't need the plea agreement instruction after all. You can take out that line. Hernandez says no, and I object to that. If there's a bias instruction, fine, but this line I object to. Prosecutor says, well, look, we don't really care that strongly about it at the end of the day. Pick what you want to do, Judge. We don't care. Judge says, I'll move on. We'll figure it out later. Roger Roots for the defense. He says, Your Honor, this instruction further bolsters Bertino and Green. He says, this is outrageous. Saying you can convict on this testimony alone is outrageous. Kelly says, this is the blue book standard. This is what we do every time. This is the plain vanilla instruction. Okay, Roger, take it easy. He said, I think it's horrible. He says, well, I'll look at it. I'll take a look at it. But frankly, obviously, there are ways we all need to work to tailor this thing. When are appropriate, the instructions of the case, but the basic concept is this. Deviating from the red book for no obvious reason is kind of inviting error to some degree. I don't worship the red book or the blue book or whatever, like some Bible root says. Kelly says, yes, that's why I've told you we'll look at it and we'll move away from where it's appropriate. So in many states, you have what are called uniform jury instructions, or templates essentially for jury instructions. And when you get charged with a crime, you don't want to rewrite the jury instructions every time. So they say, okay, what's, define this and define that. And they just assemble all the components. It's very modular, actually. Assemble all of the modules and put them in place. The judge is saying, well, we're starting from a default template. This is the way we start. And Roots is saying, I don't start from that stuff. Okay. I just find what is just. Prosecutor says, we don't have any issues with this. It's an accurate statement of the law. And Kelly tells him, I understand the point you're making, but I don't think there's going to be a winning argument. So she's got to leave for the day. Brandy says the judge and the parties are still working through the jury instructions. They made it through at least 9 pages. Jury's been excused. All right. And so they're going to hash out the jury instructions. They're back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time. We're not going to read through them, hashing out the jury instructions. We'll just look at the jury instructions. When it's done and we see what they look like, we'll cover that. Now, tomorrow in the morning, there will likely be much more testimony as the witnesses continue to be presented. I don't know what was done under seal. I don't know if those were informants or the Metro Police were there. We also had the head of the informant division was there, Jocelyn, whoever that is. And so she came out. We don't know what happened there. Maybe the DOJ will leak it to somebody over at the Washington Post or the New York Times, and then we'll be able to piece it together tomorrow. But that, my friends, is day 49 of the Proud Boys trial. A little bit of a shorter presentation there. But of course, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to go through the filings tomorrow. There were a bunch of additional filings that came out on this, including Ray Epps and others. We'll save those for tomorrow when we can unpack them a little bit more. Probably do that. Well, we'll see what we get to tomorrow. I'm not sure what we're going to get to tomorrow, actually, now that I think about it. But we are going to get to Ray Epps. That is next on deck. But my friends, we are done here today. We covered some good ground. We, of course, talked about the Donald Trump arrest. We'll be hitting that hard tomorrow. So make sure you're subscribed and that you hit that notification bell wherever it is you're watching this, whether it's on Rumble, if you're on Locals, if you're on YouTube, because it's going to be a lot to unpack tomorrow, and we'll come back and do it. We've got Trump in New York, waiting to see what Judge Juan Mercon has to say, whether Trump will be gagged and how he'll be released. We'll see what his defense attorneys have to say and what the reaction from Congress is. But now, my friends, let's hear from you and see what you have to say about all of this. I saw some very nice super chats come in. And let's see who is in the house today. We had a couple getting the show started. Thank you, everybody. Eddie's here. Says, hey, good boy Donnie and I will be in Phoenix if you'd like to get a coffee or lunch. Very nice, Eddie Block. You're making the road trip. Send me an email, brother, or send me a DM. I think we're on DMs. If we can make it work out, that would be very cool to see you and meet Donnie. There's actually a very good dog park right around the corner. Good to see you, Eddie. Hopefully you're having safe travels, brother. Thanks for the super chat, my friend. And Jeff Pearson says, secret trial in public character assassination. From Jeff Pearson. Yeah, I mean, they can just gag him and shut the whole thing down. And what's he going to do? They'll arrest him and charge him with another crime. Thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. Fred Pedamonte is in the house. He said, Rob, Johnny's turning 1 year old on April 20th. Oh, great. That's the same birthday as Adolf. Ugh. Says, everybody watching, we're going to have a huge party at Rob's house. So all are invited to Rob's AZ home on 4/20 for a great time. I didn't even put that together. Okay, April 20th. That's Hitler's birthday? Well, why is 4/20 4/20 then? Okay, I'll see you here, everybody. I guess here it is. Party time, 4/20. It's going to be lit, if you know what I'm saying. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a good time. Johnny's coming over. He's bringing uranium and he'll probably have the Epstein list and some briefcases of something. Don't know what's going to be there. But all right. Should be fun. Good to see you, Fred and Johnny. Hey, maybe Donnie. Now Donnie can bring, Eddie can bring Donnie, and Fred can bring Johnny, and we'll go to the dog park on 4/20. It's good to see you. Hey, Tara's in the house. Says Canada's government went after the political opposition. These lowly peasants. Appears the U.S. has decided to one up that. Voters, Canada, hold my beer. The U.S. We're prosecuting in the United States our political, like the leading political candidate for the Republican Party. It's crazy. And they're doing it in Canada too. Now, if they pass this new Restrict Act, can you imagine what that will do on top of it all? It'll be like total Canadian, what was it, article, whatever they enacted all the time. Zulu's in the house. How do we know the difference between a big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and a witch hunt? I know it has something to do with tribalism, but I was wondering whether that can be honed somewhat. And I was giving you a facetious response, Zulu, because I thought you were kind of being jokey about it. But my answer on this is always equal standards is really what I would default to on that. If you want to prosecute Trump for his little benign misdemeanor BS crimes, okay, but we got to prosecute the Democrats for their misdeeds as well. I'm for accountability for both sides. And I mean that through and through. If you want to prosecute all the J6ers and be hyper aggressive with them and hold them in inhumane conditions and treat them with zero presumption of innocence and no due process, I think that's a reprehensible standard, but that standard should be equally applied to everybody across the board. I think everybody should be held to the same standards. And I think transparency and accountability give us more of that, or transparency is really what gives us the eyeballs into it all. But I want equal justice. I don't want criminal politicians. I don't want presidents breaking the law and doing criminal things. But I want equal standards across the board. I don't want the weaponization of the government towards one side. And that's what it feels like is happening right now. I mean, there's one side of people who are being prosecuted regularly. There's one side of people who can openly commit crimes by protesting outside of judges' houses and things like that, who can go into and insurrect Capitol buildings in Tennessee and other places. It's accountability for one side, but not for the other side. If Trump's being indicted, there's a million reasons why Hillary could have been indicted. There's a million reasons why Obama or any one of these other people could have been indicted. Trump is not, surprisingly, the worst person who's ever existed in the Oval Office. You might disagree with that, but let me just say there have been other presidents or former presidents who've committed many crimes. And the reason we haven't decided to prosecute them is because it's not just about the technicalities of the law, of the whether somebody actually committed a crime or not. There are consequences. There are gives and takes on this. And so a witch hunt feels like something where there is a limited basis for doing it, at least in the context of the broader justice system. When you have people running for office, honestly, it wouldn't sit well with me, honestly, to have people running for office only prosecuting people. Like if we had an attorney general or a senator or somebody running just specifically on prosecuting a person in office, that doesn't necessarily help me, as a leader in this society. I'd rather have more solutions. And so I'm not for the hyper prosecution of people, but it's where we are. That's where we're going. Voice says, I never liked Trump since I was a kid, but just like millions of other voters, when he walks, he has my vote. It's hard to not get behind him in a situation like this. Who else is doing anything other than facing the floodgates? Yeah, Zulu says, yes, get them all out front. Yeah, okay. So Zulu, sometimes you're so clever, I can't tell where you're going. I can't tell if you're being serious or... He says, yes, I was being jokey, but that was my point. Yes, get them all out front. If this does that, it's a good thing. Yeah, maybe. I guess if Trump gets indicted and the Republicans start indicting all of the Democrats, the standards will be equal. That is true. The standards will be a lot more equal. But then I don't know how the electoral system functions if everybody's just prosecuting everybody. It's sort of like first past the gate, first past the first the person at the top of the hill gets all the guns and ammo and they get to just shoot everybody down and nobody can ever recapture the top. It's going to be a race to capture the prosecutorial entities. And the Democrats are far ahead on this, right? All these Soros prosecutors, they've already got it all up. So not too good, my friends, not good. But thank you for those very nice super chats, my friends. I very much appreciate them all. We got some new lights in the house. Things look a little bit different, a little bit brighter here. Thank you for your contributions to constantly leveling up this place. I appreciate it. And let's see who's over on Rumble. Our amazing Rumble friends. We've got a job done well is in the house. Oh, here's a good answer for Zulu. Says if he sinks, he's not a witch. I forgot about that. That's a good answer. We got Donut Mind Me, Salty Zippers in the house. Good to see you, Salty. And we have Dog is in there. Chappaquiddick Drinkers over there. Next set, Sedona Rocks. Janek. It's good to see all of our Rumble friends. Hey, check this out. So this is pretty cool. So Rumble's doing some cool stuff. And this one came in from Blue Bunny 420. Hey, it's the day we're going to have our party over here with Fred and Donnie. Where did this go? Here, check this out. Blue Bunny. Trump Tulsi 2024 from Blue Bunny. And this is cool. So on Rumble now, you can become a monthly supporter over there. That's amazing. Thank you for joining us, Blue Bunny. And I'm still trying to figure out how this works. But Rumble is coming in hot, by the way. They are doing all sorts of cool stuff. And we're very excited about that because I think that the screws are going to get tightened over on YouTube in this coming year, especially this next election cycle. And so we're grateful for our Rumble friends and shout out to Blue Bunny. And, and if you join as a monthly supporter on Rumble, I want to make sure you get access to our Telegram. So Blue Bunny, make sure you send me a DM or something. I don't know how I can communicate with you on Rumble, but if you're on Twitter, shoot me a DM so I can get you the Telegram link so you can join us on Telegram. And thank you for joining us on Rumble and all of our Rumble friends. All right. And so that, my friends, is it on Rumble. Let's see what's going on over on Twitter. Our Twitter friends. See, is anybody watching on Twitter? Oh my goodness. We have 6 viewers on Twitter. This is absolutely out of control. And 831 views. We're going to break the whole stinking system. Who's over here? Danny McWilliams. We've got James Pepper says the DA wants him in jail so they can Epstein him. Oh gosh, that's not good. James says technically Trump is in custody now by the Secret Service. The big question from Danny says, who is going to release Trump's mugshot? Yeah, well, it should come from the DA's office, basically the police department or the sheriff's department. They're typically the ones who process and release that stuff. And so those are our friends over on Twitter. Thanks for following along on Twitter. Thanks for following your fellow watchers, the other people who are, you want to connect with people out there in the chat and on the Twitterverse. And over on our channel at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And so this is where we're going right now for a bit of an after party. We're going to hang out and talk about some other affairs. And if you're a member on YouTube, don't forget to join and grab the Telegram link. The Telegram link is in the community post section on YouTube. So grab Telegram, join us because we're not done, but we're not going to be on YouTube. We're going to be on Telegram. Also, don't forget to get your Field of Greens from our friends over at fieldofgreens.com. The vegetables want to be eaten. You'll be bursting with green energy as soon as you start your routine. Fieldofgreens.com. Save 15% off with code Robert. And also, I have this link now up. If you want to use this mind map, if you like this mind map stuff, if you want to introduce your GIFs, your GIFs, your images, your videos, and sort of use the software that I use, you can go and sign up for it. Free account. at spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap. And look at this, guys, like his mind's just exploding. Wow. Theorize. Wow. And so check it out, spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap. If you want to check out the software that I use. Also want to thank the mods who mod down the fort for us, keeping things nice and orderly. Our friends Vienticus Prime, K Bean in the house, Just Cause. We got Play In Hooky. We got Ronnie Cole, Zulu in the house, and Geomancy along with Zach Nichols and our friend John Allen. Shout out to the meme smiths in our house, Sleepy Dog Lee on Twitter, and our friend Gigum Gigum. Grateful for everybody who makes all of the things possible. Oh, and Wims is in the house as well. Wims, thank you for that nice message. Okay, so we're going to be over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'll be here tomorrow, probably most of the day. We're going to figure out what the schedule looks like. The arraignment, I mean, theoretically should be super quick, but the pre-arraignment and the post-arraignment and the aftermath will be a lot longer. And so we'll be covering it. I'll get that posted up shortly, probably tonight. But my friends, that is it for us here. I hope you are joining us for our after party. But if not, well, then I hope to see you right back here tomorrow so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a beautiful evening, my friends. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.